Hello, everybody, and welcome into the MVP show on November 8th, 2020. And again, it's been a week, and I'm glad I'm here on a Sunday afternoon with Dan Passante and Brennan Miller. Boys, again, it's been a week, but we are here. It is Sunday, and we're already at NFL Week 9. The second half of the NFL season starts today.
It's been a wild week. Yes, it has.
A wild week in general, and then you think about the NFL has just continued to chug along. Like we had Thursday night football, and of course,
yeah,
the Green Bay Packers absolutely dominated. We're going to talk about that later. But the fact that we're halfway through the NFL season already, and a season we didn't even know if it was going to happen or not, I'm a big fan. Let's go, football, baby. Doesn't stop for nothing.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to the Packers and a lot more on this MVP show. But we'll start where the week started, and that was on Monday. And it was on Monday Night Football, and that's where the New York Giants dropped to 1-7 on the season after a 2-point loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a game that I think Giants fans have to be, for the most part, very happy about, because you're never happy about a loss, but you came in as a 12-point underdog to Brady and the Bucs, who are or looked like a contender in the NFC all season long, and you played them till the last game of or the last play of the game. So I would say overall a victory. But that wasn't the narrative that came away from Monday night's game. The main narrative was, and usually is in Giants losses, focusing on their quarterback, that being Daniel Jones. And Jones played, I would say, solid. I think is a good word for it. He made a great throw to Golden Tate to give the Giants an opportunity to tie the game, and had some good throws, and didn't, when the pocket collapsed, he found a good way of rolling out like he has, because he's a very mobile quarterback. But for the first time, especially in this season, there was a lot of misreads from Daniel Jones. There was about 3 or 4 plays where he either didn't go to Darius Slayton's way or overthrew Darius Slayton. A couple balls to Evan Ingram that were overthrown, and somehow Evan Ingram had the best hands on the team this year, and came out and made great plays. But Jones did not, or most of his throws did not look great. And it's a concern. And again, the narrative that was taken away from this game. And after I, was pretty much yelling at the TV because I thought the last play was a pass interference, I could see why it not being, or why they, picked up the flag, this and that. I think in a game with fans, that probably stands and we go to overtime, but there wasn't fans, and that's, the modern game now. But I was disappointed in Daniel Jones' performance, because there's only so much you could do with an offensive line that was without a starter, Will Hernandez, because of COVID. And, of course, the Giants don't have Saquon Barkley. They're relying on Wayne Gallman and now Alfred Morris, who they took from the practice squad. You might remember his days in Washington. But a lot of throws from Jones that you want him to make in start 20. A lot of reads, again, to Darius Slayton, where even if he connects on one of the 4 big ones that he missed, the Giants take that game handily. And he just couldn't do it. And that was really the narrative that took me into Tuesday until I settled down and was like, all right, it's 20 starts into his season, Daniel Jones. Let's look at other quarterbacks who obviously have started 20 games. Most great quarterbacks have at least played a season and 4 games. So through 20 starts, Jones is 4-16, not great. 31 touchdowns, 21 picks, and 15 fumbles lost. Abysmal. A turnover machine is what the New York Post called Jones today. But look at other quarterbacks that are pretty good, I would say. You look at Peyton Manning through his first 20 starts. Only one more win, 5-15, 36 touchdowns, but 34 interceptions, and 5 fumbles. You look at Eli, the guy that won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. 20 starts, better record at 10-10, and a better stat line, 27 touchdowns, 15 picks with 2 fumbles. But not great. And then you look and go back a little more. John Elway, 20 starts. Great record, 13-7, because Denver's D at the time was very good. But 19 touchdowns and 22 interceptions. And I'm not bringing up these stats to say that Jones can be this guy. Giants fans could only hope. But I think it's a good indicator that you shouldn't panic yet. Should Giants fans be concerned? Yeah, there's always times to be concerned. I mean, this team has been abysmal for the last 4 seasons. Is there, can you question Jones? Absolutely. Your 20 starts in, and there's throws that maybe you should be making in your fourth or fifth start that you see around the league. Joe Burrow's already making, and the young quarterbacks like Mahomes, Lamar Jackson have been doing for years. But I think it's good to just, again, get all the information you can and not panic, but realize that I think this second half of the season, which we mentioned starts today, will be an audition for Jones for the starting job next season. He needs to play well in these 8 games, and I understand the Giants are still, like I mentioned with the running back situations, without Devontae Freeman today versus Washington. Golden Tate is, and we'll get into this, but Golden Tate not traveling with the team because of selfish behavior according to Joe Judge. So the weapons aren't there. But he still has to make the most out of what he has. And luckily for him, he's playing the team that he's won 3 out of his 4 career wins against, and that being the Washington football team. But I think, guys, overall, I came in after that Monday night game, a little concerned about my quarterback, and now I'm level-headed, and I'm still not, singing his praises, but I'm a little more calm.
Yeah, I think when you look at what the issue is, and I know you mentioned a lot of those guys who have not had or didn't have great starts to their career. And I mentioned in the podcast, and I'll just say it again, just to reiterate, I don't think that he came out as the biggest prospect like a lot of those guys did. Obviously, Peyton Manning led his team to the national championship. John Elway was just a ridiculous athlete, got drafted in multiple sports. Well, Daniel Jones was probably going to be available late in the first round if the Giants hadn't decided to take him with the number 6 pick overall. So I don't know. I just think that that's maybe the difference there. Other than that, I mean, you take a look at this Giants team, and I think that while the defense has been very good, we've talked about it a lot. The defense has stood up and been pretty much top 10 in both rushing and passing yards allowed. I think it just makes it a lot more difficult when the offense has no productivity. When you can't move the ball, when you can't score points, obviously you're not going to win games. The point of football, score more points to the other team. And if you can't score points at all, it doesn't matter how good your defense is.
So I didn't know this. The Giants are 1-7. It's a great idea. They should use the rest of the season as a tryout for Jones. As long as he gets better, and if he doesn't, then they should look for whatever else to do. And should move forward with that. Where do I go for all my Giants opinions? Of course, I go to Giants Reddit. And just to show you that the rest of the season should be a tryout for Jones. The top headline on Giants Reddit when you join it is "Game Day Grub Thread. What you cooking for today's game?" So there's really not a whole lot on the line today, guys. So as long as Daniel Jones gets better, that's all they need to worry about.
There you go. And again, I'm a member of Giants Reddit. I don't see any of this. I don't know what Giants Reddit you use. I just see, people talking about the game, and then I log off because it's like I see a terrible opinion. But yeah, I don't know what Reddit you use, Dan. I don't think it's Reddit, but okay. I'll
have to look and send it in you. But just to let you know, there's some great answers. Yeah. Homemade KFC famous bowls.
Wow.
Potato soup, giant pastrami sandwich, chicken, egg, cheese, biscuit. I don't even know what some of these things are. But anyway, there's some really good answers. I'll send it to you.
Oh, thank you.
Giants are eating good for this game, is what I'm hearing.
Great. Yeah, so, and again, this game being the Giants versus Washington, which is a little over 50 minutes away from kicking off. An interesting stat going into this one. Coming into this game, it's the first time in Giants history that they've played 4 games consecutively and lost by 7 or fewer points. So it just shows you how they've been close in a lot of games this season, but just haven't finished the job. This game, and we'll get into our picks as we always do in the final 10 minutes. This game, even though the Giants are 3-point underdogs, 2.5, it really depends where you get your number, but I think this is a winnable game for the Giants, and a game I think they have to win. I can't imagine them losing to the Washington football team just the way they played the last couple of weeks. If they come out flat today, it's a concern, and it's the first time I think you go into a game expecting to win on the season and don't, and there's going to be even more rumblings from the Giant fans about their quarterback and about the team in general. But so it's definitely an interesting game today, and the second one for the season for Washington versus New York. And I mentioned Jones has 4 career wins, 3 of them being against the Washington football team, and 3-0 in his career against Washington. So now we'll pivot.
just before we switch topics here, I got to ask, at what point, because, the NFC East is pretty much still wide open. Someone could win it with 5 wins at this point. At what point does your mindset flip from we're still a competitor in the division to we should probably be trying to solidify at this point what looks like a top 3 pick?
Yeah, it's hard for that line of demarcation. I think just because of the schedule, it's going to come around week 12. I'm going to just pull up the Giants schedule because I think it's, I think a great question that you just asked, because it's Washington and then it's Philly, right? So then it's a bye after that. Coming back from that, I think because if they lose versus Washington and versus Philadelphia and a Philly team, they're lucky just at the schedule. Philly's going to get healthy and not good, but they'll be the best team in the division, but they're not going to be healthy by that point, by next week. So you get Washington again, and you get a banged-up Philly team again, a team they should have beat previously. You get a bye, then you play Cincinnati. You lose that game, it's Seattle, Arizona, Cleveland, Baltimore, and you're done. So if they don't take Washington, Philly, or Cincy, or and lose all 3, it's tank mode, absolutely. And it's tough because the Jets, and we'll get into them as well with Lawrence. They don't look like they're gonna win a game. Do the Giants want to tank for Justin Fields? And it's such I don't know. I haven't been so entrenched in mock drafts yet. I probably will become again in a couple of weeks, but. I don't know if Justin Fields is going to go 2 overall. I mean, he's highly touted as well. So there's a margin of error that the Giants sort of have to hit. If they're the 4th pick, they might not get those 2 quarterbacks. So, it's going to be interesting. But just because of the schedule, it's, again, to reiterate, Washington today, Philadelphia next week, a bye, Cincy versus a rookie quarterback and Joe Burrow. And then after that, the schedule gets difficult. Even if they're 1-2 coming out of that schedule, it's over. I think they have to have a winning record out of 3-0 or 2-1, and then I think, not that they'll tank, they'll never come out and tank, but where the mindset is shifted a little different for fans. I never root for my team to lose. I think we've gone, over this. Maybe I should in certain times, but I don't. Because I think it's just all who you draft. The Giants drafted Saquon Barkley 2nd overall, and I believe it was the 2016 draft, and they had the 2nd pick, and there was a lot of players that maybe arguably were better that they could have taken. When they drafted Odell Beckham Jr. in 2014 now. Geez, it's forever. But Aaron Donald was still available in that draft. So you still have to evaluate talent correctly and whatever falls your way. And, not to get into this rabbit hole, but there's also the exploration that if they have a high draft pick, to trade it away. They believe in Jones, but a lot of teams want quarterbacks just because of, how the league is. It's always a quarterback heavy and pulling the plug on some. So they might explore a trade as well, which I wouldn't be opposed to either. But definitely interesting. And yeah,
I was looking at just a few big boards, mostly Tankathon, which keeps track of draft odds for every league. Right now, their big board has an offensive tackle from Oregon, Penei Sewell, as a number 2 overall prospect. If the Giants were to get what they're projected to get, the number 2 overall pick right now, would you be opposed to them taking an offensive tackle and maybe passing on Justin Fields, but not trading the pick away?
I mean, the offensive tackle situation, they're going to have to evaluate it, but you drafted Andrew Thomas this year with a top 3 pick, which the Giants got, and Thomas has looked shaky all season. Last week versus Tampa was probably his best game, so he's taking steps in the right direction, which is a good sign. And then you have Nate Solder, who's supposed to be on the other side. This year it's Cam Fleming because Nate Solder bowed out because of COVID. He opted out. So they're good offensive tackle-wise, but are they? We'll see over the next 8 games, because if Nate Solder doesn't return or whatever, then maybe you go that route. Offensive line's always a concern with this team, and it's amazing, because they drafted an offensive tackle in 2015. His name was Eric Flowers, and he was a bust. So I'm always weary when offensive tackles are that high in the draft. Again, I know nothing about this Oregon kid. He could be a Hall of Famer. But a little concerned. I think it'll just be, just how they evaluate the offensive tackles. I think if the season ended today, you'd be fine with what you're going into 2021 with, which is Andrew Thomas taking steps in the right direction. And Nate Solder was a Pro Bowler in New England, and he played solid last year. Right. So you would think, if everything's back to normal regarding COVID, that he'd be back in the saddle. So. Yeah. So there you go. And now we'll shift. Interesting stuff. And again, you'll probably, if you follow this show, going into the later parts of the seasons. If we're talking New York football, we're talking the 2021 NFL Draft because that's all there is to look forward to. That's it. So, yeah. All right, but now we'll shift into a good team, and that's Brennan's team. That's the Green Bay Packers. And they, yes, give a round of applause. They played Thursday night and had a 17-point win against the beat-up San Francisco 49ers. They were just decimated with injuries. And going into that game, Packers looked, pretty much being inconsistent all season. A great win followed by a devastating loss, and that was a loss coming against the Minnesota Vikings, their last L, but then came right back and dominated the 49ers, and Rodgers has looked tremendous this season. Devontae Adams is arguably the best receiver in the NFL. But Brennan, I ask you this. It'll be two questions, but to start with this, do you think, because I know you were a little doubtful in the beginning of last year, and then as the season progressed, you were fully on board with thinking they were a Super Bowl team. Where do you stand in terms of evaluating this team as a contender?
I'm sorry I missed that question because I was telling you how hard that I buy into when a team succeeds, even though they're not a good team.
No, do you evaluate this team as a contender?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially, you talked about last year. Last year, I don't think that they were a very good team, and yet they still went 13-3, made the NFC Championship game. This year, I think that they have shown, especially with the play of Aaron Rodgers, that they are able to contend with the top teams in the NFC. Yes, they lost to the Buccaneers. Yes, they lost to the Vikings. But, that loss to the Vikings, it's very difficult to beat an in-division rival both games that you play them in a season, especially when the margin of error in the NFL is so slim. But I think that they're a team that, if they get into the playoffs, can definitely compete. They're up there in contention for the number one overall playoff spot, which obviously is the only playoff spot this year that is going to earn a bye. I think that Aaron Rodgers is playing at an MVP level. And right now, I think he's got the third best odds to win the MVP behind Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. Russell Wilson obviously just having a heck of a year, going to get his first MVP votes of his career, which I think is just atrocious in general. But then you take a look at the Packers this year. I mean, yeah, they don't have a number 2 wide receiver. At this point, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is their number 2 guy, and last week, while he did have a good game, he still only had 2 receptions. He had 2 receptions for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I get that he had a good game statistically, but when you only get 2 catches and when you had more chances, I mean, he had a few drops early in the game as well, there's a big question mark in that wide receiver spot. Alan Lazard is supposed to be coming back soon. He was the guy that kind of stepped up to be that number 2 guy before he went down with an abdominal injury. And, of course, you got big old Bob Tonyan at tight end, who had himself a few good games. And, when you have a tight end who can go vertically down the field and open up some routes, obviously that's a good thing. But the question mark is still at that wide receiver spot where you don't really have a guy other than Devontae Adams who can make anything happen. Defensively, I think that they aren't as bad as a lot of people are saying. When you look at the statistics, they're about a middle of the road as far as defense goes. And that just means that if one guy starts stepping up and playing a little bit better than he has at the beginning of the year, they can move into the top 10 as far as defenses in the league. Their pass defense is very good. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Jair Alexander. I think Matt has him at like the 3rd best. And then Joe Buck on Thursday said that he was maybe the top quarterback in the league, which for the Packers to draft a defensive back that ends up being good is just blows my mind because they went so many years drafting defensive backs and ended up to be busts. So for one to work out, love that. Then you get to the run defense, and it's a little bit different. A report came out this morning. I forget who it was, but the Packers had tried to trade. For the Giants' defensive tackle, but the Giants weren't willing to trade their defensive captain to the Packers as a run stopper. So that, hurts a little bit. I'm going to blame that on you exclusively, John.
Yeah.
That's it. Not on the team. So, the run defense is a little bit more lax. They've had injuries at middle linebacker. And, of course, you would have loved to see them go out and trade for a defensive run stopper, whether it be a D-tackle or whether it be a middle linebacker who can step into the hole and plug a gap. But I think it really comes down to the fact that the Packers, even though no one is really hot, you've had guys who are playing a little bit under their skill level. Preston Smith being the main culprit of that on the end. I think he only has a single-digit number of quarterback hurries when last year he was in double digits in sacks. I think that those guys need to start playing to their skill level a little bit more. Zadarius Smith is still in the top 10 as far as sacks and quarterback pressures, so you'd love to see that. The defensive backfield looks good, but the run game, you got to step up. Someone on that defensive line has to start plugging holes, and hopefully when we start to get a few of the middle linebackers back, that we had originally had slotted in those positions, but got hurt, that helps the situation as well. But as far as right now, I think that they can beat any team in the NFC.
Yeah, and you sort of mentioned this, when talking about the Packers, but they didn't do anything at the trade deadline. You mentioned the going after or having interest in the Giants defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson. Ian Rappaport, as you said, reported that. And also, as you mentioned, they need number 2 receiver and didn't get Will Fuller, who was, rumored in trade talks. So what's your reaction to them not making a move at the deadline? Confidence in them? They believe they have enough, or you want them to go out and get another piece?
I think the biggest part of this, and I don't understand why Packers fans are upset with the Packers taking quarterback in the first round of the draft last year. Ideally, that was my ideal situation. I think the Packers should have taken Jordan Love in the first round. I can 100% agree with that. Should they have traded away picks to move up however many spots, single-digit amount of spots to get him? That's up for debate. Should they have taken a running back in the second round? Probably not. They probably should have taken a wide receiver in such a deep wide receiver class, as we're seeing guys who were taken in the second, third, and even the fourth and fifth rounds at the wide receiver position who have excelled this season in the NFL. I think that when you take a look at what they have done at the trade deadline, or what they did at the trade deadline, I think they were feeling good about taking a first round quarterback in the first round, running back in the second round. But at that point, I think you had to have committed to trying to trade for a wide receiver in the middle of the season. You didn't get one in the offseason. And the one that you did get sat out because of COVID. So I think you have to when you look at your wide receiving core, you can't say that this is a team and this is a wide receiving core that we feel good about. The Packers have always had good wide receivers. I mean, you take a look back. It went from Donald Driver and James Jones to Donald Driver, James Jones, and Greg Jennings to Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and Davante Adams, and a pretty smooth transition there in between. At this point, Davante Adams is the only guy left, and you have to try and get a number 2 guy. They didn't go wide receiver in the draft. They didn't really pick up anyone in free agency, so I think that they had to try and go out and get a wide receiver before the trade deadline, and they didn't, which surprises me. I mean, I get that you're trying to save draft picks, but this could be the year, and I get that Aaron Rodgers is having a good year this year, and you can kind of rely on him for next year as well. But then again, you never know. He's 36 years old, turning 37 in December. I know that we've seen quarterbacks play into their 40s as of late, but that's an anomaly. Before this, we didn't have quarterbacks playing into their 40s. So I don't know if not trading for a wide receiver was a good idea. I think I would have been willing to give up draft picks, late round draft picks this year to get a number 2 wide receiver, whether it be Will Fuller or anyone else who was on the deadline or on the trading block at the deadline. And as a partial owner of the Green Bay Packers, I'm just a little bit upset with management's decision not to go out and get a wide receiver.
So there you go. A full breakdown of the Packers from Brennan. Packers 6-2 in the NFC North. NFC North. Yes, that's the NFC. Yes, I got the division right. 6-2. Chicago is 5-3. And Chicago plays a big game today against the Tennessee Titans to try and stay in lockstep with the Green Bay Packers. Now we'll shift into the other New York football teams. And, or some would argue, I think Dan would argue, the only New York football team. But we'll talk Bills-Seahawks and the Monday Night Football game between the Jets and the Patriots. Dan, we'll start with your team and the Bills. And Buffalo has been, I guess, like the Packers. It's hard for me as a Giants fan to say this, inconsistent. But, I mean, the Bills have been at times. But after a great start to the season, they took a loss in Kansas City, which is, expected. It was a close game. I think a 9-point loss. But close, played them well. But then the next week came against the Jets and beat them 18-10. They're not going to lose versus the Jets. But pretty much were going through the motions that whole game to not score a touchdown. It was Tyler Bass who had to kick 6 field goals to give them the 18-10 win. And then they played last week a division rival, the New England Patriots. And luckily Cam Newton fumbled in the red zone, mishandled the ball, and that's why Buffalo got out with a win. This week, they can't afford to make mistakes or come out flat playing the Seattle Seahawks, who, as Brennan mentioned earlier in the show, have an MVP candidate in Russell Wilson. So your feelings, Dan, going into this game, maybe confidence a little rattled, but Still good in the AFC East. Don't have to worry about that. But if they want to be a good team, this is a game in which they're going to have to step up.
Yeah. Like I think I said this yesterday. I might not have, but for the first time ever, I can say with confidence the Bills' offense is better than the defense, and I have never said that. So it's kind of crazy for me to be sitting here and saying that the defense is the side of the ball that is the serious problem for Buffalo. As I look here at some of the stats, in 6 games in 2020 season, Buffalo's defensive struggles has come as a surprise. Okay. 24th ranked in yards, 24th in pass defense, 25th in run defense, and 21st in points allowed. That's from USA Today. They have all of that. That speaks for itself, people. They need to get better on defense. Josh Allen can put the ball in the end zone. I mean, apparently not against the New York Jets, but against every other NFL team, he can get in the end zone. So I don't think that's really part of their problems. It is the defense that needs to be better, and especially against a Seahawks team that has been good on offense so far this year. I mean, 414 yards a game. They've been really solid, consistent throughout the season. So if the defense can play well, then I think they can win today. But I'm not, like I said yesterday, let's not be crazy. We all know who I'm going to pick later. But I think it's going to be a difficult game for Buffalo to win today, given how brutal the defense has been these past few weeks, quite honestly.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you look at these two teams just in the recent history, Seahawks, Bills, you would think a game like this is a low-scoring defensive affair just because of the Legion of Boom, and Seattle's always had great defenses, and Buffalo, whether were great or bottoms of the AFC East, their defense was always the strongest component of their football team. But different this year, and expect a shootout maybe between the Bills and the Seahawks. And that, I think, one of the best games to look forward to in Week 9, and that game is at 1 p.m. on CBS if it's in the area. But if you're a New York City guy like me, or in the area, you're getting you maybe get that game hopefully, but you're definitely getting Jets-Patriots Monday Night Football. The whole nation is actually, and it's not going to be a good one. It just won't be. It could be maybe a great game, but it just won't mean anything, even if it is. The Jets are coming in with an 0-8 record, and now the start of their second half of the season. The schedule doesn't get any easier. Does not get easier at all. And they'll be without their quarterback, and Sam Darnold. All week, it was reported that Darnold wouldn't play. Right shoulder was a bit bummed out, and Adam Gase has pulled the plug, said, hey, we'll go with Joe Flacco. So Sam Darnold, yet again, a 0 game for the Jets, because even if they lost, they could see what the future of their team is, who their quarterback is, and how he plays. Can't do that now with Darnold on the bench, on the shelf again, so they will start Joe Flacco. Positive for the Jets, though, is that it's the first time they will get their 3 main receivers in Jay Crowder, Rashad Perriman, and rookie Denzel Mims. And Mims has looked good over the last 2 games. I mean, there's not a lot, when there's a bright spot on the Jets, it, I guess, is exemplified because there's so few. But Mims is what the Jets hope is a part of their future. They drafted him very high, and he's a receiver out of Baylor, so he will play. And again, the top 3 receivers will play for the New York Jets, but it'll be Joe Flacco giving him the ball. But all that considered, a 10-point spread, this is a New England team that isn't of yesteryear. This is a New England team that comes in with Cam Newton, a Bill Belichick who went on Boston Sports Radio and said that they bottomed out, for the last couple of years' success, and didn't call it a rebuild, verbatim, but pretty much almost said that with, hey, we spent our money, now we're, getting the ramifications of that. So the Patriots are, not in win-now mode either. And there's only so many games this season, if you look at the Jets' schedule, that might be winnable. Am I crazy to think, maybe not a win, but the Jets can keep this close on Monday Night Football? And Dan, we'll start with you because you alluded to on our podcast, which airs 11:30 a.m. on VIC Radio and is in podcast form on Spotify, that maybe this game is a bit close or closer than the experts think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely could be closer just because the Jets and the Patriots always play each other tough. Like we said, I mean, I used this analogy last week, and it really didn't work out well at all. But the Patriots this year have cable and last year had DirecTV. I remember saying that last week, and then the team that I said that about actually ended up losing. But anyway, I think that it should be a close game. It's a divisional game. It's two teams that are down, to say the least. And we may expect an entertaining football game, maybe. I don't know. I'm not really sure how to word that, but please, someone help me with what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it's going to be similar to the Jets-Broncos Thursday night game that we had earlier this year, where it's just two teams that like really aren't that good, but like they're both not good. So like maybe it's competitive and maybe we get a fun shootout game. Like that's what I'm thinking it's going to be like.
So there you go. That's if it's going to be entertaining football, I'm down for it. Again, it won't matter, which is crazy. And you look through the years, Jets-Patriots games, and they're always a turning point for either season. You look at, I hate to bring this up, but the butt fumble of Mark Sanchez on Thanksgiving. Last year with Darnold, he was seeing ghosts versus the New England Patriots on primetime. And then on the flip side, the Jets always used to get an early season win and shock the Patriots in both years that they went to AFC championships in 2009 and 2010. So always a season-defining game, at least one of the two, between the Jets and the Patriots. Not this year. And probably not the last couple of years, but definitely not this season for them. So there you go, a Seahawks-Bills breakdown as well as the Jets and Patriots. And again, we will pick every single game in NFL Week 9 coming up at approximately 12:50 when we give our lock, upset, and game of the week picks. But now we'll shift into college football because it was quite a day yesterday in the ranks of college. And we'll start, I think, with the only game you can start with, and that was the 1 versus 4 matchup in South Bend, Indiana, between the Clemson Tigers, number 1 ranked, and number 4 Notre Dame. And again, Clemson was out without Trevor Lawrence because of COVID-19. But it's a game that delivered. It was a 47-40 win for Notre Dame in double overtime, believe it or not. Clemson's, I want to say this name, and I think I'm going to, Mike Tirico just nailed it last night. Let's see, Brennan, you give it a shot after I give it a shot. But DJ Ogugule went 29 for 44, 439 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Travis Etienne was held only to 18, 28, and a touchdown. Brennan, you want to give that name a shot?
I'm good, thanks. Though.
Okay. Okay. I think I nailed it, and I'll say I nailed it because there's no fact check. What was that?
I'm good.
Yeah, okay. Good.
So I appreciate you giving me a chance, but I'm good.
Good. Okay, great. For Notre Dame, Ian Book was 22 for 39, 310, and a touchdown, and Kyron Williams was the stud, 23 rushes, 140 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And this game was a great back-and-forth game. A high-scoring affair in the now ACC, by the way. First time that this matchup was, because of Notre Dame, because of COVID, is in the ACC this year. And was back and forth. He graded on a bit of a curve because, again, Lawrence wasn't there, but Clemson definitely came to play offensively. Clemson's run defense is definitely a concern, I think, because that's not going to get Trevor Lawrence's help. He plays quarterback, so that's the run defense that Clemson might carry on to what hopefully is an eventual college football playoff. And we could break down this game, and I think, Brennan, you're going to give your thoughts on it because you came in, with our pre-production meeting and we're talking about it. But social distancing doesn't apply in South Bend, Indiana, apparently. That was the big takeaway. They all, and I understand, right? It's the only people allowed at the Notre Dame games are, I believe, staff, students, faculty, family. There aren't just Notre Dame fans in the area or who could travel who are there. So, if everyone there gets it, hopefully they don't leave South Bend and it's just a college bubble with it floating in the air there. But just not a great optic. And this isn't, I'm not going to, I don't want to degrade other colleges, but Notre Dame isn't this, hey, everyone gets in there. It's a prestigious institution. It's one step, I'd say, below an Ivy League. Maybe some would say, what was that?
Oh, sorry. So it's not Alabama?
No,
oh,
wow. See, I don't take those shots. Brent, I leave you to take those shots. I don't take shots.
If anyone from Alabama wants to come at me, go ahead.
Okay.
I feel like no Alabama fans are really watching this, so we're good.
I don't think so. But yeah, I don't take those shots. I let you do that. But yeah, come on, just bad optics. It's the same thing with Turner in the World Series. It's bad optics. Are those kids going to go party after that game last? Of course they probably are. But don't do it on national TV. when people are, one, watching that game, and two, even a bigger audience because SNL got great ratings last night, and that was deleted. So there was even more eyes on you, and just not even football eyes. Like, a lot of people. Like, come on, guys. Come on. But yes, Brennan, if you want to give a breakdown, because besides that, it was a very, very good game, and, I would say the best game in the college football season thus far.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, yesterday was a great day for college football in general. We had multiple games between ranked teams. Obviously, this one being the biggest one, 1 versus 4. But the thing I want to talk about is the fact that, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence was out, but what else can you really expect a quarterback to do? I mean, Clemson's quarterback, DJ, went 29 for 44 with 439 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, you can't expect any other quarterback to do better than that. The man had almost 440 yards through the air. Like, I don't know. I think people are going to keep, as far as looking at the rankings, and they're going to come out at 2 o'clock today. I don't think Clemson's in the top 4. I really don't. Wow. I think that they're going to have Clemson at number 4 with this loss, obviously being to another team that is in that college football playoff, but I don't think they should be. I think they're going to attribute that to the fact that Trevor Lawrence was out. And yes, I get it that he's going to be the presumptive number 1 overall pick in this draft, and he's a very good player. But you can't really get anything else from a quarterback. I mean, the guy went out and threw for 439 yards. On top 4 right now, probably Clemson. Not Clemson. Excuse me. Alabama, Ohio State. Throw Florida in there with a big win over Georgia. Yeah. And then just for S&Gs, I'm going to say probably Cincinnati. Throw them in there too. They were number 6 this week and came out with a big win. So why not throw them in there? I don't know. It was a very good game. Obviously, 2 overtimes. John, you talked about the non-social distancing. We can talk about that a little bit more. Just because, hopefully it is just kind of a college bubble. And to relate back to that, we're not going to talk about this in depth, but I just want to talk about the fact that the Dodgers had 5 positive tests throughout the organization this week. Yep. So obviously not a great optic for Justin Turner. Yeah, good game. Good game. Notre Dame beat Clemson. My brother had $50 on the game, so he was very much into it. He kept my dog awake all night, literally all night. He kept yelling "rally dog" at him. He's a puppy. Like, he's less than a year old. He's like 6 months old, and he was just trying to go to sleep. My brother would just, every play, just run up to him and just, like, shake him to keep him awake because Notre Dame was doing well when he was awake. So, we got to keep the train rolling here. But it was just a good game to watch. I'm glad Notre Dame won. I would be more upset if Notre Dame wasn't in the ACC, because I love to see ACC teams make the Final Four, being a Syracuse fan myself. But since they are playing in the ACC, I'm totally fine with Clemson taking it out here.
Yeah, there you go. And for full context with Brennan's dog, that thing is going to grow to be like 6'5" and 240 and play linebacker. It scares me, even as a puppy or whatever you want to call it. Terrifying. But that's a side note. We mentioned, or Brennan. Yeah. Yes.
He's going to be 200 pounds.
It's going to be a big boy, as they say. Florida, number 18, beat 5 Georgia, which Brennan alluded to, 44-28. Indiana in the Big Ten remains undefeated, 38-21 win against Michigan. Probably gonna drop Michigan out of the rankings. And 2 top 25 teams, one a usual perennial top 25, and another one who? But USC was down 2 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter and came back against Arizona State. And Liberty survived the scare against Virginia Tech. They actually kicked a field goal. It was blocked. Virginia Tech ran it back, but there was a penalty on Virginia Tech. So I watched this game, and it got called back for Liberty to attempt another field goal. They drill it, so it went from a devastating blocked field goal loss to Virginia Tech to another win for Liberty against an ACC team. The other ACC team, if you're wondering, are the Syracuse Orange, and Syracuse came out and they played well versus Boston College, a team that played well versus Clemson. But Boston College escaped with a 16-13 victory, dropping Cuse to 1-7 on the season. Brennan, any thoughts?
Syracuse is playing with their third-string quarterback, so I would like to keep that in perspective a little bit. But at the same time, you got to come out and beat Boston College. I also want to talk about Liberty a little bit more. Syracuse, their losses coming to ranked teams. I'm going to keep Liberty in there as long as they keep winning. Sure. Hugh Freeze Going to keep Liberty in the rankings. They're probably not going to move up much. They were 14-point dogs heading into that game against Virginia Tech, even as a ranked team, and Virginia Tech obviously not ranked. So that's a pretty big upset for Liberty, but they're going to keep rolling. Another team I want to keep an eye on, the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. They won last week, and at this point, they are the only undefeated college football team in the state of South Carolina.
Wow. So there you go, full college football perspective. Another note, Ohio State crushed Rutgers 49-27. It was 35-3 at halftime in that one, but just to finish all the local perspective as well. All right, so
and a shout out to a Syracuse guy, running back for Indiana, Stevie Scott, Big Ten active rushing leader, and had a good game yesterday.
All right, so now we'll get into our MVP segment, which again is the best of this past week, and we look, sports, entertainment, everything. Anyone who we thought had a good week, we give the MVP honor. But we'll start with this because it is breaking news, and I think something that most people will be affected by. I think he is who he is, and you've probably watched his program one or two times, but. The official Jeopardy account has tweeted out that Alex Trebek has passed away. So I thought I would put that in this segment. He was battling pancreatic cancer, and he died at 80 years old, and that's breaking on Twitter right now. And again, verified because the official Jeopardy account tweeted it out. And I think, it's to mention at this segment because he is just perennial TV all-star. Jeopardy is a great program. I think it made me smarter. I don't know. Or made me feel dumb at times, but Alex Trebek was always smooth, and sad to see him go. One of the most beloved Canadian Americans out there. And if you guys have any thoughts before we get to the MVP segment, but I wanted to relay that on to our audience.
Yeah, and actually I didn't know that before you mentioned it, but obviously with the three of us in the TV landscape, you look at him as one of the greatest hosts of all time. Not just in a sports landscape, obviously it's a little bit different, but yeah, you got to look at TV as a broad, general kind of topic. And when you look at the way that he was able to host his show and the way that he was able to hold himself in such high esteem for so long, even battling cancer, you really just got to give the guy a hand. And actually, I'm incredibly sad because he really is a TV legend and someone that a lot of young people who want to be on television, future personalities look up to or looked up to. Obviously, very saddened by his passing.
Yeah, I mean, you're an icon when your name is in the title, right? Jeopardy with Alex Trebek. Everyone knows that it's him. I think, he spoke to so many people on a nightly basis, hosting the show where I don't know any of the answers, and I don't think I'm alone. I don't think a lot of people would be able to be on Jeopardy. But yeah, no, it's hard. It's going to be hard to imagine a world with Jeopardy and not with Alex Trebek. He will certainly be missed.
Yep. So we'll segue into our MVP segment, but yes, Alex Trebek, that news and our thoughts on it. Our MVPs of the week, it also is in the TV realm, and we have similar MVPs. I know Brennan and I do, and we'll see what Dan's is, but I'll start. There was a lot this week in terms of people glued to their television, and this isn't a political opinion, but if you were watching CNN, you got to see John King break down every single county and every single district in this country and know more about it than I think some of the state representatives within those states. He knew where they were, and obviously is the chart, to help him, in terms of the numbers, but he's bringing a lot more than just the numbers. He full context and the demographics of these districts, knowing their history even before, his finger touches it to actually, illustrate his point. So darn good. Suited up the whole time, which unlike some people on other networks didn't suit up. And just a great broadcaster. And I feel like they didn't give him a break. They didn't give him a poor stool to sit on, at least in the camera. Like, when they cut away, I'm hoping he got to lay down for 10, 15 minutes before he had to shoot back out. And, he was running on pure adrenaline for a lot of days. So, So John King of CNN is my MVP of the week. Good job by him.
Yeah, mine was also John King, just for reference. We discussed this before the show.
Yeah.
We don't actually usually tell each other who our MVPs are just because we want to surprise each other and maybe get a laugh. But when John said that his MVP was, in the realm of television without being a sports guy, I was like, well, I know who it's going to be. So is mine. And then he said, well, it's John King. And I said, well, so is mine. So I'm going to shout out Steve Kornacki.
Oh, there you go.
He was MSC's board man, and he did arguably just as good a job as John King. So I'm going to give it to both of those guys for the dedication that they showed. Journalists are getting a bad rap these days. Absolutely. People don't really respect them as much as they used to 4 years ago, for reasons we can explain, probably not on this show, but you can infer yourself. But for those guys to come out and show the dedication that they had and being able to keep up and keep track and be well-informed on everything going on in this election, regardless of who you were voting for or what side you're on, you got to respect the hustle. That's why I'm a big fan of Joe Buck and his hustle, even though a lot of people don't really like him as a play-by-play announcer. But you got to respect the dedication. So I'm giving it Steve Kornacki, John King. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Kornacki was the guy I mentioned not wearing a suit, so that's why he minuses points for me. But, yeah, Dan.
Fair enough.
I think that if you are an American journalist covering the election this past week, congratulations. Thank you very much. As far as my MVP goes, I don't want to be the same. So coming in number 2, I want to put Notre Dame fans who stayed in the stands. Thank you for not doing that. That was an awful idea. Now, when there's a ton of virus everywhere there, no one should be surprised. But I just saw this on Twitter, and I had to make it my MVP. I know John's going to appreciate this. Today, my MVP is Don LaGreca.
Yes.
Because today is Ed Kranepool's birthday. You know Don LaGreca's famous rant about the New York Mets where he screams about Ed Kranepool. I highly recommend that you look it up. Today, happy birthday, Ed Kranepool, by the way. Don LaGreca, you get it because that is a fantastic rant.
Yeah, you can find that probably on YouTube after you're done watching our show, of course. But, yeah. So, 3 great journalists, I would say, actually, that we just picked for our MVPs of the week. So there you go. Brendan, before we go into our locks, upsets, game of the week picks, do you want to give us some actives, inactives, so people could maybe adjust their fantasy rosters accordingly, or do whatever, be more informed? That's what we're here to do. You have that
only because you asked so nicely, John.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Actives and actives for the early ones. Active Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, Matthew Stafford didn't practice at all this week, but he's going to play, so that shifts the Lions line a little bit. Philip Lindsay is active. Tim Patrick, Frank Clark, and Desmond King on the defensive side of the ball, all active as well. Some inactives. Calvin Ridley will not play in the early games for the Falcons. Neither will Mark Ingram or T.Y. Hilton. Jadeveon Clowney also inactive. And Adam Humphries, who is not going to play either. So a lot of wide receivers on that list. But as far as that goes, adjust your fantasy rosters accordingly. There's still a big question mark. Just want to mention this because it's a big name, and mostly because I have him on my fantasy team, so I've been paying attention. Zeke Elliott is still questionable for the 425 games. So if necessary, go pick up Tony Pollard as a handcuff and just kind of, see who's going to play, alternate him.
Thank you, Brendan, and good points on Pollard and Elliott. And we'll talk about that game, Pittsburgh-Dallas, as well as many others as we now go into our NFL picks. And we'll start with our locks, upsets, and game of the week picks. Just a points update in terms of where we stand in our point system. Brendan leads the pack with 91, Dan with 85, and I have 76. All of us had a rough week last week, barely over 500, and I think it was 7 points in total that me and Brendan had, and Dan had 6. And the only thing that I hit the game of the week, but we all missed our lock and we all missed our upset. And it was the first time Brendan missed a lock this season. And we'll start with our locks. I'm 3-5 on the year. Brendan, as I mentioned, 7-1, and Dan is 6-2. And I'll get mine out of the way because you don't want to hear it. And that's the Houston Texans. They're taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars today. The spread is -7. And again, these picks that we make are not with the spread. We just give the spread for full context. But I have the Houston Texans in this one. Look, who is Jacksonville starting? I don't know. Who's that guy? I don't know. I know the Texans, even though they've been dreadful this year, are still starting Deshaun Watson. They didn't trade away Will Fuller. J.J. Watt, even though he's as unhappy as ever, he's still going to play hard. And I think Houston will have enough to get it done versus Jacksonville. It's always usually a trap game when you look at the AFC South, and they're hard ones to predict. But I think in this one, without Gardner Minshew, man, I think Houston gets it done. They are my lock. Brennan, your lock for NFL Week 9.
I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals. They're taking on the Miami Dolphins. 7-point spread in this one. It was a little bit closer yesterday, but it has since moved. Still fits under our threshold, though, so I'm going to stick with it. I think the Cardinals' offense is pretty good, led by, obviously, Cliff Kingsbury, head coach, who is a big offensive guy, doesn't really pay attention to defense that much, coming out of the Big 12. And I think the Dolphins are playing a little bit higher than we kind of expected them to play at the beginning of the year. I think we can't really disregard our opinions of teams at the beginning of the season. They were kind of expected to be at the bottom of the AFC East, with the New York Jets. And even though they've got 3 wins on the year, they're still starting a rookie at quarterback. And I think that the Cardinals are going to be able to take this one, not easily, but I think it's a lock.
My lock this week, okay, I found it, is the Tampa Bay Bucks. I was doing some research because I was trying to find out who the Jaguars starting quarterback was. Anywho, my lock this week, I'm not going to tell you. It's the Tampa Bay Bucks. It's also our game of the week. So if I get it, I get a lot of points. If I don't get a lot of points. But I think the Bucks are going to beat the Saints. The Bucks are favored by 3.5 in Tampa Bay. I think that the Bucks are a better team, and the Saints have been struggling, so I think they'll get the win.
Yeah, now we'll shift into our upsets for Week 9, and Dan already gave you the game of the week, which we'll get into next. But upsets, I think this is a very interesting week where there doesn't look like there's a lot of upset candidates out there. In terms of standings with our upset, this has been where we haven't hit the this year. Brendan and I are both 3-5, while Dan is 2-6. I'll start, and this one is barely an upset, but it's still an upset. Las Vegas versus Los Angeles Chargers Raiders. Vegas is a 1-point favorite. I'm going with the Chargers. I don't believe in the Raiders anymore. I was a believer early in the season when they played really well, but the last 2 weeks have looked pretty shaky. And the Chargers just don't finish games, but they, again, like similar to the Giants, play tough in every single game, just can't put the finishing touches on it. I think they do this week because they're home and in that beautiful new stadium, and I think the Chargers get it done. They're my upset for Week 9. Brennan, where are you going for your upset?
I'm going to look at another game, Bears versus Titans. I'm going to go with the Bears. They're 6.5-point dogs. I think the Titans aren't playing up to the level that we thought the Titans could play to, obviously coming off 2 straight losses, one to Pittsburgh, so that's kind of fine. But then they lost to the Bengals last week, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to bounce back. Obviously, they have Derrick Henry, and to be honest, I haven't really taken a look at the Bears' run defense to see if they're going to be able to stop him or not. But the Bears are just a team that comes out and wins games. I mean, they're not good. They're not going to blow you away in any category. At this point, we're not even sure who their starting quarterback is. Obviously, we know it's Nick Foles, but you have Mitch Trubisky on the bench, too, who started the season and played the first 3 games and went undefeated before he got benched. So there's a lot of question marks in the Bears, but for some reason, they just win games. They're the Packers of last year. I said it in the podcast. I'll say it again. They're not a team that is going to blow you away. They're not a team that is going to lead in any statistical category by the end of the season, but they put it all together when they need to. They score more points and they win more games. So I'm going with the Bears as my upset.
And even if you just want to go with the Bears just to say the Bears, I'm okay with that too. My upset this week is exactly the Detroit Lions over the Vikings. Vikings are favored by 3.5. But the Lions have been playing well this season, and Matt Stafford has had times where he looked really, really, really good. I don't think it's crazy to think that the Lions win this game, and I think 3.5 might be a little generous given how the Vikings have been so far this season.
So there you go, our upsets for NFL Week 9, and now we'll go into the game of the week, and there was plenty of game of the week candidates out there. We mentioned earlier the Bills versus the Seahawks. It's definitely not Cowboys-Steelers, even though that's the 425 game that most everyone around the country will get. It's Saints versus Bucks. Sunday Night Football, Brady versus Breeze, a matchup that's going to look great. It was our game of the week in Week 1, and we all decided in Week 1, or Dan decided to go with the Bucks, and Brennan and I went with the Saints in that one, and it was the Saints who pulled it out. This week, though, and Week 9, it shows you how it's different. Tampa Bay is the favorite, 3.5 at home, and across the board, we're going with the Buccaneers. Dan already gave you his opinion and made it his lock for this week. And I look at it like this. Sure, the Buccaneers coming off a tough game versus the Giants in which they barely escaped. Yes. But something about the Saints this year just isn't gelling. I don't know if it's maybe just not relying on my boy Taysom Hill enough, or Drew Brees not having enough in the arm to throw 20 yards anymore. Maybe it's been the loss of Michael Thomas, who's slated to start tonight in Sunday Night Football, or maybe just the defense being But I'm just not feeling the Saints. And that doesn't mean I'm overtly feeling the Buccaneers either, but I believe in them more than I believe in the Saints, and that is why I am picking Tampa Bay over New Orleans. Brennan, your reasoning behind making the Bucs your game of the week pick?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Saints haven't really shown anything special, even though, like, quietly Alvin Kamara is blowing away everyone else in fantasy points this year, which kind of, like, blows my mind, but he's, like, up by 30 points or something like that. But I just don't think the Saints are that team that we saw last year and the year prior to that, where they had the explosive offense that was countered by defense, by a good defense. And I think the Bucs, I mean, they're bringing Antonio Brown in, a guy that the Packers called on but couldn't secure. I think that they have a very solid receiving core. Obviously, Gronk and Tom Brady have gotten into a little bit of a groove here in these last few weeks. And the Bucs, the biggest reason for me picking them is that they've gone out and proven that they can beat good teams in the NFC. They beat my Packers. They've gone out and shown that they can beat other good teams as well. And I think that they're going to be able to win this one. Obviously, it was different in week one. As I mentioned earlier, difficult for a team to beat the same team twice in a season. Teams change their game plans. They don't go the same way. They don't play the same way as the season progresses. And I think the Bucs have shown that they can play a little bit better as we get deeper into the season in the Saints game.
So there you go, our game of the week pick for NFL Week 9. And now we'll look at the rest of the slate leading you up until 1 o'clock, which is about 5 minutes away. And Brendan, you'll start us off with a very good game also this week, and one we haven't touched on, that being the Baltimore Ravens versus the Indianapolis Colts. Baltimore favored by 1.
Yeah, I have the former Baltimore Colts in this one to win this game. I'm the only one who's picked the Colts, though. Everyone else has the Ravens. I think the Colts' defense is very good, and the Ravens had a little bit of trouble moving the ball last week. Obviously, Darius Leonard came back for the Colts last week, and that kind of bumps them up. He's one of the best linebackers in the league. When you get one of the best linebackers in the league to return to your lineup, your defense is going to get much better, and they were already in the top 10. So I think the Colts' defense steps up and wins them this game.
Next on the slate, Lions, Vikings. I already kind of touched on this. All three of us have the Lions. Should be a close game. Vikings favored by 3 at home.
This next one comes as a surprise just because we're all unanimous in our selection of the Atlanta Falcons over the Denver Broncos. Atlanta is -4 in the Dome, but Denver has played a lot of close games this season, and Atlanta is known to not finish games. So I think really interesting, and maybe that number is something you could explore, but we are all in agreement with the Atlanta Falcons being our selection.
Next up is Texans versus Jaguars. John already talked about it as his lack of the week, but Dan and I both agree the Texans are going to win this one. It's only 7 points, but, as John mentioned, nobody knows who the Jaguars quarterback is. Well, Texans still have Deshaun Watson, so all three of us go with the Texans in that one.
And still, we're not going to tell you who the starting quarterback is. That's something you're going to
No, absolutely not. Look it up yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Panthers and Chiefs. Chiefs are favored by 10 at home, as they should be. Probably have the best quarterback in the league right now. Although I did see Christian McCaffrey is starting to come back from his injury. Could be rotated in a little bit this game. So fantasy people maybe can pick up a few more points if you put McCaffrey back in. Who knows, though, should be a slow getting back to it. But like I said, all three of us have the Chiefs.
Next one is Giants versus the Washington football team. Look, the Giants win versus Washington this season in Week 6. It was the main reason was Daniel Jones only was on the floor once, only got sacked once. He is been sacked the third most amount in the NFL this season, just behind Carson Wentz and Joe Burrow. If the Giants keep him upright, it leads to lack of turnovers, which could lead to a Giants victory. I have the Giants in this one because I think they have enough. It'll be a close one, but they have enough to beat Washington. Dan is in agreement, but Brennan is going with the football team.
Next, we got Seahawks, Bills. Seahawks favored by 3 on the road. If it's a shootout, should be a fun one, folks, but the Bills defense has not come to play. The Seahawks are probably the smarter pick in today's 1 o'clock matchup.
Next up, Bears versus Titans. 2 out of 3 of us have the Bears. That's me and John. Dan going with the Titans, playing with the record a little bit, and you know what? Can't blame him on that one. They're favored by 6.5.
We are all unanimously, again, Chargers over Raiders. I gave you my reasonings earlier in the show.
There I am. Steelers, Cowboys. Steelers favored by 14.5. I've picked this team to lose so many times, and they haven't. So now I'm going to pick them to win. And if they lose, I'm going to be really angry next week. Steelers, all three of us have it.
Cardinals, Dolphins, already talked about it. It's my lock of the week. Go Cardinals. Everyone else agrees. All three of us, Cardinals across the board. Cliff Kingsbury, going to win it.
Next one up, game of the week. Again, we all have the Bucs. And then finally, Monday Night Football, Patriots against the Jets. Patriots are -10. We all have the Pats. It could be interesting. Maybe the Jets keep it close, but it'll definitely be an interesting game. If you want our breakdown, you can look earlier in our show. But that does it for our NFL Week 9 picks, and that does it for the MVP show for this week. I'm Brennan. I was about to say I'm Brennan Miller, alongside Dan Passante and Brennan Miller. Yeah, you're Brennan Miller. I'm John Vicari. Thank you for watching. Have a great NFL Week 9 and a great week in general. Come back here next Sunday at noon, as well as on VIC at 11:30 a.m., which you could listen to our podcast as well. But this has been the MVP show.